right, everybody, welcome to another Friday Standdown. We're sitting here on April 22nd, 2022. We are in the Landman Life headquarters, sitting here with Mr. Massive Frack, who is, celebrating acquiring a 13th job for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're sitting at WTI 101.17. What did natural gas do today?
It's down, I think 3% or so. Still in the sixes.
I mean, what we went to 7 the other day, right?
We got to.
Was that Wednesday?
We got to 8 or 9.
I think it was 8 for sure.
And it puked promptly.
I mean, does that actually change anything for anybody out in the oil field? Because nobody's drilled gas wells.
No. I talked to somebody
10 years, right?
Said, in the Haynesville, it said they were interested at $4. So it doesn't really, it's all gravy at this point.
Yeah. We do not have the intern with us today. He's in Tulsa doing God knows what, but we've got Mr. Buddy Stewart Wade sitting here in his bitchcorn mine, but he can't turn on his audio because all you'll hear is Bitcoin miners running. So glad to have him here. WTX is on the other line taking a phone call. And we'll see who else is going to hop on. I've heard from a couple of people that said if they got out of meetings or finished their phone calls that they were going to be joining us today, but we shall see. So, where are you working at these days?
I've got my regular broker work that shall not be named, and then what else? So I've picked up a crew chief job in Louisiana, which is different.
How much time have you spent working in Louisiana so far?
So I worked in-house for about a year. And I didn't really get a whole bunch of hands-on experience. We drilled several wells there, but my boss was what you might call a micromanager. So I did more of the filing with that stuff. But Louisiana is a very, very different kind of place, and everybody says it, but never ceases to amaze all the different words they use to describe things. It would be much easier in normal language, but
do they still allow you to file anything you want at the county clerk's office?
It kind of appears that way.
Because I remember, that was probably like in 2014 that I had asked a bunch of the readers on the website to send me just random shit that they found filed in courthouses they were working in. Most of it was, talking about selling slaves and, shit like that from, the dawn of time with title. But I got a lot of shit from Louisiana, and most of it was filed by the same guy. And there were some really interesting conspiracy theories that this guy was filing of record in some parish in Louisiana. And
no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
He was talking about the government agents that were watching him and how he was filing this of record in case he disappeared, to look into, the government for making him disappear, and some really interesting stuff. So I'd imagine that you're going to find some really entertaining little nuggets while you're working over there.
Yeah, I found a little nugget today. I'm not going to repeat the name of the church, but a little bit racially disparaging reference to a church, if you will.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Not that long ago.
Really?
Yeah. Late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a different time, but kind of surprising. I'm sure I'll find all kinds of good nuggets.
Have they had the civil rights movement in Louisiana yet?
I don't think so.
You know, it's amazing how shitty all their roads are because, you know, they held out for so long on the drinking age that they didn't have federal funding for any of their roads for, God, I don't know how long they held out. I think it was like close to a decade.
It's a wild place. I went out on a staking when I was with this last company. Just one stake, and I went out on the rig. The stake is probably about what you would imagine. You know, you're in between a bunch of crawfish ponds, cane fields,
Yeah.
just roads and standpipes and irrigation ditches. But there's a house in the middle of nowhere, and we rolled to the entrance of the house. It was about 100 yards from the house, and people emerged from the house that I can only describe as looking like the insane clown posse. And I could not believe what I was witnessing. Like, you already feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and for somebody like that to pop out, just pink hair, like black circles, you know, all kinds of piercings. It was insane. Which I think turned out those were the people that we needed to talk to.
Yeah, I had a buddy back in probably 2010 that went into some trailer park in Houston trying to get a couple of leases signed. And somebody came up to him and told him, "Hey man, you're wearing the wrong colors to be in here." And he said, "What color am I supposed to be wearing?" And the guy said, "You're wearing blue and you need to be wearing red." So he grabbed a red bandana out of his pickup truck and tied it around his neck.
Goodness.
And he said he's never been more scared of getting shot trying to get a lease signed than in that trailer park on like the south side of Houston.
Your good buddy that worked with me at that company told me some interesting stories about trailer parks in Liberty County. Very similar.
Yeah. I mean,
people know you're there before you do.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah. The call goes out.
Yeah.
You know, 5-0 rolling up in your white F-150.
For sure.
Money man coming.
Yeah. Oh no, we have a warm beer issue.
Yeah. Apparently, Mr. Buddy Stewart Wade was not properly prepared with his materials and has let his hydration supply get warm.
You know, if your beer is warm, I have to wonder about your processing. If it's getting a little hot too.
So here at the office, I talked with the property manager last week, and she told me that about a month ago, they found a guy who had a 175 square foot office here in this building. And he had the office filled floor to ceiling, wall to wall with Bitcoin miners. And they found out what was going on because he asked them if they could run 220 power to his office and asked if he could install some ventilation fans to the outside.
Red flag.
So they asked, "Why exactly do you need 220 and ventilation fans?" And he said, "Well, I'm mining Bitcoin." And so they went in and they looked at it and they figured out immediately why the offices on either side were always complaining that the AC wasn't working, because you could feel the heat radiating from the walls. And he put, you know, a whole bunch of soundproofing material up on the walls, which also, you know, drastically increases your thermal density, you know. And they told him that he was either going to have to start basically paying the utility bill for the building or leave. And he left. They said the utility bill dropped over $2,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, you know, I remember there was a period of time for a while where the lights would flicker in the building off and on pretty much all day.
We solved that mystery.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
Huh. Imagine that. wild that it also kind of a good snapshot of the state of the Bitcoin mining industry. If you're crazy enough to get into it, but you're dumb enough to not understand, things like excessive heat and energy
and sound. Also,
yeah.
I mean, look at all of that shit. How many miners do y'all have in there, man? He can't unmute himself because we wouldn't even be able to hear him. That's a shit ton of miners. And is that just open to the air?
Kind of looks like that light looks like natural light to me, but
I mean, I think he's just in a Connex box.
looks like it.
But I don't think a Connex box has the greatest ventilation in the world. I've spent a little bit of time in Connex boxes to know.
That's a pretty interesting story, I would think.
Even when there's, rusted holes on the roof of the Connex and everything, still not much ventilation in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's kind of interesting when we were talking last week with our friend, the aspiring congressman in Missouri, and I asked him about what he thought about Bitcoin. And he immediately kind of started stepping back from that. And once I explained why I was asking, because the oil and gas industry has developed a new fascination with Bitcoin mining, I think he understood a little bit more about Bitcoin and the oil and gas industry. But it's amazing how everybody's so hot for Bitcoin projects right now.
It is. I'm afraid a lot of them are a little late to the party. But
You got something to chime in on that, Mr. Zeus?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's late to the party. I think this is still pretty early in the game on this, especially. There's just there's a limited amount of Bitcoin to go around, right? And it doesn't get any easier to make it. The difficulty trend is, even though it goes down sometimes, like it's like it self-regulates. So that's what's pretty cool about that. The shortage of miners and the chip shortage that those were things that like contributed to one to the other. There was a shortage of miners, and there probably still is a little bit, but there's that's starting to go away. And now it's on capital who's going to finance it. Do you have the land? And the big one is, do you have the electricity to run one of these damn things?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm still fascinated by it. My judgment's a little clouded because I have a friend that's kind of involved in the commercial real estate world, and he's kind of a financial whiz, and he did some pretty deep dives on running a Bitcoin mine in commercial, in a more standard space, air conditioning and all that stuff. And, I generally trust him. I understand that if you have a raw source of energy that's, being wasted otherwise, it seems like a very good prospect in terms of your energy. But, you trade that for, your dusty environment and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of standing on the sidelines for all this stuff, which is what I do with all things I should have invested in the past. But
I mean, it's definitely a thing. And, I've had my buddy Jordan on here on the show a few times, and, he had a Bitcoin miner in his apartment back in like 2012, 2013-ish. And he never had to turn the heat on in his apartment. And, that was like way back when they were first switching from using GPUs to ASIC mining and everything. And, that thing was in his guest room and just loud as fuck, hot as fuck. He was always having people try to hack in to take control of his miner and everything. And, at the time we thought, well, you're a fucking idiot for spending, I think he spent, a couple $1,000s on it. And, if he had actually held on to and maintained control of all of the Bitcoin that he mined with that thing, that would be, several $100,000 at today's prices.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for him, he didn't really hold on to or maintain control of most of that. So, yeah, it would have been cool if you had, set up a Bitcoin mine back in 2012 and were, some kind of gajillionaire sitting on all of that. There's a girl that was in my wife's class at our high school who lives in Costa Rica now because she made so much money on Bitcoin that she will never have to work a day in her life again.
Yeah.
Sounds nice, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'd get boring after a while, but
I'd find something to do.
You'd go invest it in, marathon stock or something like that.
Probably, yeah, most likely.
Find a new way to lose it all.
First thing that comes to mind. No, I think I'd
Probably Devon. It'd be Devon stock.
Yeah. I'd do something for the children of the world.
But I still think that the only way that you can really get a viable economic model working with using natural gas for Bitcoin is if you are at a intersection of the electrical grid and gas pipelines. Because if you can dynamically switch between mining Bitcoin or selling electricity into the grid from your generators, you're not ever going to be losing money.
Mm-hmm.
If you are strictly mining Bitcoin and you have no other option than to mine the Bitcoin, there are going to be times where you're operating at a loss because you have your equipment cost, your cost for all the gas, maintenance, stuff like that. I think in the long run, you're probably still going to come out on top, but that's in the long run. And again, it also depends on how much gas you have at your disposal. So,
yeah, it's interesting. Like on a more focused level, there goes our Bitcoin, our Bitcoin. I mean, I hear people talking about being located next to, a sales point of some kind. And, I'm speaking a little bit out of school, but I find it hard to believe that, a DCP or an enterprise or somebody like that would be like, yeah, we'll sell you, 100 MCF a day from this like reliable gas from this point.
Well, see, I think that most of the time when something like that occurs, it's excess capacity that they can't put into their system.
Okay.
And in the rare occurrences like that, you have to be the right person in touch with the right person at exactly the right time. So I don't think that those are deals that come very often. But the problem now is that there are too many people saturating the space trying to say, I operate natural gas Bitcoin mines and shit like that when it's, one person with a Twitter profile and they probably spoke at fucking Empower, they were on a panel or whatever. And so, got all the fucking, hipster cred for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual people that have been doing this for a while have moved on. They're not looking for small fish anymore. And they know how to find the whale. Doesn't happen very often, but when you find the right intersection of grid capacity plus, gas capacity,
mm-hmm.
I think you can make a lot of money.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. I wonder, not being a financial whiz myself, I wonder how the financials actually look when you find that intersection. What is your capital investment, and ultimately, it's where we need the oil field bro, right?
When was the last time anybody talked to that guy?
I think he. I thought I saw somewhere that he's bounced off of Twitter.
Is he? I mean, well, he switched back to oil and gas.
Oh, that's right.
Before he
bounced.
Yeah, before he disappeared. So good for him. I was talking to Laura Palmer from Energy Funders about having her come by the office some Friday, since she has an apartment here in San Antonio now, but she is always fucking traveling.
Yeah.
And everything. And we all need to get together sometime and have a couple of drinks and just bullshit, because she's got some very interesting stories herself.
I imagine.
I mean, she's friends with Scott Cheeseburg, so
Yeah, that alone,
the
McGovco stories alone that would come from Cheeseburger.
I mean, he's been texting me some shit lately that I'm not going to say here on the show or anything like that, but I think he's kind of figured it out now. At least, what was the problem with McGovco.
Yeah, no, I think he,
in retrospect.
Yeah, he told me at some point. He was over that whole thing, but yeah, no, I'm still sure he has a bunch of stories. And just the fact that my personal foray into funding oil and gas investments is already so wild. About the other day, one of the guys that's itching to invest in oil and gas went bankrupt in 2019. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Wait, is this the bro?
One of the two
bros.
One of the two bros.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, do you have concerns about, maybe fucking something up and, having some menacing person show up with a baseball bat?
I don't have those concerns. I probably should. They seem like
you're too old to be fearful of things like that these days.
I don't really care about anything at all anymore. But I'd like to think I can kind of spot someone who's like more of a hustler and less of a bully, or I don't know what you would call it, but there's just so one of the guys is a foreigner, the other one is not very removed from being a foreigner, and they both just kind of recognize the opportunity here, and I admire them for what they're trying to do. But this is starting to be a pretty mature industry, and we have a pretty good grip on the kinds of things that can go wrong when new money enters the space.
Yeah.
And so it was difficult to explain to these guys, I totally understand what you're trying to do, and people do what you're trying to do all the time in an orderly way. They have to get securities licenses and things like that to do it. Does it make it any better in terms of what can go wrong? But if you want to do it legally, that's the way you have to do it. But essentially what these guys were trying to do was tap friends and family and say, hey, have we got a deal for you? And if you're an outsider, it makes perfect sense. Like, do you all want to go in on a lottery ticket with me? Everybody gives me 10 grand. I show up with 3 million and, let's go. But the problem is immediately.
Let's poke a hole.
Yeah. What can go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Immediately.
Let's just move the rig out over there. That looks like a good spot.
Inevitably, when something does go wrong, the story that I shared with them, my first exposure kind of earlier in my career, my company ended up with a well that had 30 investors in it, which is a lot. It's not totally abnormal, but it's a lot. But things got really interesting when the first thing went wrong. 30 turned into 100 overnight, and 70 of those were not anywhere in the paperwork. So you can imagine everybody's surprised when somebody calls your office and says, we own an interest in this specific well that's having a problem. So it could be a mess, but
talking with some of the guys like Hot Dog and Moody and Davis and some other people that actually operate some wells and everything, and I think even KP could kind of vouch for this, that the smaller the interest, the more the pain in the ass that person is going to be. And you're going to hear from the smaller interest owners on a regular basis. Yep. Whereas when you hear from the larger interest owners, it's probably going to be much less frequent, but much more butt clenching.
Right.
Yeah,
that's 100% true. We have, speaking of Bitcoin, there's a Bitcoiner that went to Baylor. We've talked about his dad ran a pretty big company in West Texas, oil company, or several oil companies.
You talking about Gideon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His dad was a perfect example. You never heard from his dad, but when you did, something was really wrong, and you better listen.
Yeah.
But he was always in for a minimum of 10%. Sometimes he'd take more, and he just cut a check. Didn't work out. It's fine. He was there the next time with 10% again.
Yeah.
Was that the kind of investor you need? You have to have.
Was that with any of the RPM stuff, or was that before that?
No, it was before that.
Okay. Well, my uncle retired from Energy Transfer.
Yeah. I'm waiting for him to fund our next venture.
Effective
you too could
April
be a
1st.
Media conglomerate.
Pizza party, bro.
Yeah.
We can ride electric motorcycle mini cycles around an empty warehouse on TikTok.
Yeah.
Influencing shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Talking with my uncle, I asked him how retirement was treating him, and he was on his way to the airport to go, golfing somewhere with a bunch of buddies, and flying down to South America for board meetings and shit like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like most people's retirement to me.
Yeah,
but
I could deal with that. That's the kind of retirement boredom I could deal with pretty easily, I think.
Yeah. But you're gonna have 17 jobs until the day you die. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the
which one of your jobs is gonna be the one that fucking kills you? Because. I mean,
hopefully not this new one. That's my fear.
I mean, there always is. You've got that one where you say, one of these days, Alice. One of these days.
Yeah. Yeah, the new Louisiana job is it caused some pretty immediate butt clenching stress.
Yeah, being a crew chief is something that I would never do.
It's not worth the bump, I don't think.
So I had a crew chief one time when I worked in DeWitt County, and he showed up maybe like one day a week down there, and would show up at about 11 a.m. and sit there at his desk, usually without a computer, for about an hour, and then say, hey, who wants to go get lunch? And then after lunch, he'd disappear again. And he called me one time, and it was like a Thursday at 7 o'clock in the evening, and said, hey, is anybody still in town? And I immediately thought, oh, I mean, he's trying to like bust everybody's asses or something,
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh yeah, I mean, I think everybody's in town. You know, we got this poker game Thursday nights and everything." And he said, "No poker tonight. I need you guys to go get some work done. Has to be done by 8 a.m. tomorrow."
What?
So round up some guys and go get it done and bill for your extra time. Don't forget to bill for your extra time. And I was like, "Oh, I won't."
Yeah, no problem, boss.
So started calling everybody. Nobody was in town. I found like 2 guys and said, "Hey, we're not playing poker tonight. We got to go get this shit done." So we went to the office and, kind of brought the poker game to the office and, drank all night and got the work done and sent it in. And then the next week when the crew chief showed up, he said, "Why is it that you did it that way?" So, well, you asked us to get the run sheet done, so we did the run sheet. What do you mean? And he said, "Well, when I gave you those instructions, I was intentionally vague as to how you were supposed to get this done. And you did way too much work on this."
Okay.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sweet.
And that was kind of his hands-off management strategy.
Top notch.
Getting work done. So I don't think you can get any worse than that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I probably err on the side of being way too cool about things. Like my first couple of interactions with these guys, they're like falling all over themselves to let me know what they've been up to and when they're going to get me their assignment so I can review it. And I'm like, man, I really don't care about that. Like, I care about making sure everybody, the client's happy. That's immediately realized that's all that really matters. If the client's happy, everybody's fine. If he's asked 3 times for a specific ownership report or something and it's not on his desk, like that's a real problem. I don't care what else you're working on, like that's all he cares about. So as long as they understand that, but yeah, ultimately it's a lot of additional stress for not a lot of additional money.
I have a buddy who was a crew chief in like the early stages of the shell boom.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he had a crew. There was like 30, maybe 40 guys working for him. And he was in his like mid to late 20s. And so very young to be a crew chief. And he said that he got the most amazing excuses from people as to why they weren't at work or couldn't get their work done or whatever. He said there was a guy that called him one time and said, "My wife's got the cancer." And he said, "Well, I hope she's okay. I mean, is it the same cancer as 3 months ago?" And the guy said, "No, it's worse. It's in her leg now."
Oh, God.
And he said, "Well, I hope she's okay, but if you're not going to be able to turn your work in, we're going to have to let you go."
Yeah.
And he said the guy was like, "This just really isn't a good time, boss. I really need the money." And he was like, "Yeah, but you're not working." So
yeah,
Can't pay you to not work.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to that aspect of things if things continue to ramp up. Because managing people is.
So are you doing like, is it Haynesville stuff or like where are y'all?
Yeah, it's Haynesville.
Okay.
They're blowing and going.
So is it like producing gas to go to those LNG terminals or what? Do you know?
Yes, actually directly in this case with this particular client. So
I mean, that's interesting. You're helping to save Europe from Russian oppression.
That's right. I'm doing
freedom
more,
gas, baby.
I'm doing more than just a yellow and blue placard on my profile.
Exactly.
I'm putting action.
You're saving children.
Yeah, saving children right now. But no, it's fascinating. I've told a few people I never envisioned a world, certainly not 2 or 3 years ago, that I would be working in the Haynesville Shale, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, the Haynesville, well, I was just saying that nobody's drilled gas wells in 10 years. I guess, isn't the Haynesville kind of the only exception to that? Is there still shit going on in the Marcellus?
Oh, sure. Yeah, DTL.
Yeah, but at the same time, like they're sending their gas down here. They're not using their gas up there.
I'm not.
No, because none of their pipelines can go east.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I got it.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah, I think they got like, or in the early stages, I think they got one line out of there.
Right, but it's been at capacity, I think,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
We should get DTL on here sometime.
Yep.
Haven't seen how savage that dude's beard is in a while.
It's probably phenomenal.
I mean, it can't beat Zeus over here, sitting here on the couch.
I haven't trimmed mine up in a while. I'm actually sitting on the floor, by the way.
Well, you know, I can see the couch.
Right. Yeah. Man, when I moved to West Texas, it was, you know, we lived in Stonewall. So that's, you know, DeSoto Parish, Haynesville hub, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought by 2019 we would be back in Louisiana, just back at the grind, doing the normal thing. And
Making fucking millions of dollars.
yeah, probably. No, something. Making something. And, you know, the longer I stayed out here, the more I liked it. This is, you know, it's a good spot. But I've got some buddies that are working back there. I got a buddy working in construction for what's the folks that are the Michigan company that went in and bought a bunch of stuff from Indigo and what was the midstream company? Momentum.
I have
DX,
no idea.
DTP or DTX or DT midstream, it's something like that. There's like a utility.
DTP,
Oh, you're talking about
DTL.
Detroit Energy something?
Yeah, DT Energy. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So he's working for DT Midstream, DTM, and he said they've built out quite a bit in like DeSoto, Sabine, Red River Parish, and they're moving down like into Vernon Parish, and you know they're starting to get closer to the what's that Eagle Ford trend? That's what do they call it when it gets east of the Sabine? The Tuscaloosa Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a chalk tail that goes in there, but
Is that Austin?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Travis Peak is in that area too.
Yeah.
Every time everybody's talking about Travis Peak, it's such a odd name. I feel like it should be in, you know, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota. But the Haynesville is an interesting deal. And, you know, the people who owned minerals when the Haynesville Shale first kicked off, I think, made quite a bit of money. I don't know that they're still as prolific, but I think also the people who owned minerals over on the Texas side made out better than Louisiana. Louisiana's got some really odd pooling laws and shit.
Yeah, well, it's
You have to have consent from everyone, right?
no, you essentially force pull them.
And what do they call that in Louisiana? I think they call it servitude.
You just call everything servitude. Servitude.
Forced servitude. That was the first thing that we talked about when you took that job. We had a discussion on forced servitude.
Gosh, even I'm blanking on the they're not called deeds. They're called something else. It's just everything's kind of ridiculous. But WTX, do you know how those wells come online, like volume?
When I was there, it depended on. There was a lot of things that a lot of variables, right? But but like around Logansport and then across the river in what was that, Panola County,
Mm-hmm.
and even like down into Sabine Parish and stuff like that. Some those, it wasn't uncommon for a well like in the first 90 days to be at 35 million a day.
Wow.
And then but
that is insane.
Yeah, and then they would level off around like 15 million a day, and that was, you look at some of these wells that we're bringing on in the Delaware Basin, and they're like gassy wells, and it's like 1.2 to 1.8 million a day, but they're also making 1,000 barrels of oil, right?
Sure. But at a certain point, I mean, I don't know what is my non-finance brain showing, but I was looking last night. There's an area of Oklahoma that I worked, and I asked all the powers that be why we weren't drilling more wells. I mean, I knew that the general answer is because they were essentially dry gas wells. They were deep, expensive wells to drill. The land costs were next to nothing because it was actually Indian acreage, and these wells came online at sometimes 15, sometimes closer to 20 million a day. Sometimes, if they tended towards the lower end or towards 10 million a day, they probably made, 500 barrels of oil a day, something like that. Maybe not 500, 100 to 250, let's say. And I was just doing the back of the napkin math last night.
What time frame was this?
This was 15, 16, 17.
Okay. So like 60s to 80s.
Yeah,
price wise.
Yeah, on the oil side, but you're going to be looking at the gas, and you don't really have any liquids to speak of, so you're just looking at the price of dry gas. And back then, especially in rural Oklahoma, you're looking at $2 to $2.50. And so that well, and the fascinating thing was these wells had very little decline, at least initially. It's been 6 years now, basically, since I looked at them, and they have declined. The wells are still making 2 or 3 million a day. But I don't remember the specific.
But at today's prices, that's probably about the same.
Well, in the part that I can't solve for is what's the AFE cost of the well now compared to 2016? Because they were $12 million drilling completes in 2016. I don't know if any parts have come down to that, but
well, I mean, if you adjust that for inflation, that's $45 million now. So money well spent in 2016, right?
Yeah. That's just fascinating.
And I'm guessing you're talking Southeast Oklahoma, and there's not there's a lot more gathering and processing there than there was even in 15, 16, right? There's a lot more of that there now. But even back to the 2011 like gas heyday era, right? It's there was very little takeaway in like Cole County, Atoka County, that area. That's kind of built up, but there's not. It's richer gas than is in the Haynesville, but it's not. It's not like Permian rich or Eagle Ford gas rich, right? But there's still in that area. There's still only just a few on the residue end of a gas plant, like the actual like methane natural gas takeaway that to get that gas out of there. And most of those all end up in North Louisiana, East Texas, and they're all competing for the same pipe space.
Yeah. Well, this in particular was. It would have been Western Blaine and Eastern Custer County. So I don't know how far that is west of Oklahoma City, but basically pretty much due west of Oklahoma City.
Oh, I've sold some minerals in Custer County. They're in that's fringe, like scoop stack stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So Western Blaine is like the
fringe
max you want to go for stack.
Right? Yeah.
And then you get into basically just old school, deep, high pressure gas, like the Hefner's.
Oh yeah, all those 20,000 foot test wells and shit that they did back in the day. I mean, impressive feats of engineering.
Yeah.
But I don't think they ever paid out. So
I know a 30 million a day Haynesville well's gonna pay out awfully damn quick. I wonder how much those are to drill and complete. What's the vertical depth on those wells? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't know AFE cost either. Since I'm a little closer to the wellhead now, but like then I was working for Energy Transfer and Enterprise Products, so it's
okay.
Yeah. I could give a shit.
I'm sure they're still pretty expensive.
So one of my neighbors has a good buddy of his from, I think, like high school and college maybe, that comes in town every once in a while, who works for Enterprise and is one of their like chemical engineers that manages their salt dome storage facilities and everything. And that's a fascinating aspect of the industry that not a lot of people actually understand or even know that we're storing. I mean, most of the SPR, well, not most of it, a lot of it, I think it's like 40% or something like that is salt dome storage.
Really?
Which is pretty fucking wild out on the Gulf Coast.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, because think about how much it would cost to build all of those giant, tank farm facilities. Yeah. For the SPR. And so they're using salt domes. So a lot of that storage, which is really cool. But also, I mean, back in the day, like, in the early 1900s, when people were drilling for oil and everything, like you hit a salt dome and in the wrong way, and your rig disappears and everybody on it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of gas storage too. When you can find them, it can be a pretty profitable thing. Just, kind of like to take your Bitcoin, like at the nexus of all these nice things for Bitcoin. If you happen to have salt dome storage in close proximity to some takeaway capacity in one form or another, and you could just you would have to have a sizable field of some kind, but just like, well, I'm not going to sell my gas at $2.50. I'm going to fill up the cavern for the next 2 years. Like, imagine how pretty you'd be sitting right now. It's like, oh, flip it the other way. We're going to sell it to Enterprise at $7 an M right now.
Or Cheniere or one of those, LNG companies or whatever. I mean,
I would love to find somebody that's really versatile in LNG stuff.
We need to find somebody. There's got to be somebody on EFT that knows how that LNG shit works. We just haven't found them yet. So, I think we got WTX sitting here on a phone call. I'm rolling solo momentarily, but let's switch over here for 1 second. What is natural gas price? Just under $7 an MCF, which that's a hell of a lot better than $2, but still not getting anywhere close to the heyday when Aubrey was kind of running the game, which I don't know that we're necessarily going to get back there anytime soon. I think eventually, the way things are trending, we would have to. But again, if people continue to drill and produce in areas like the Haynesville or Marcellus, Utica, stuff like that, heavy gas, I think you're always going to have a better supply than demand. But the associated gas is something that people keep talking about. I just think that associated gas in the oil windows is so much harder to get to actual markets that you kind of have a little bit of a price adjustment on that. Yeah, I'll take one.
See?
Sure. Whatever. I was just talking to myself about how I don't think that we're going to get back to the heyday of natural gas pricing the same way when Aubrey was running things anytime soon, but I think that eventually we're going to have to.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that you can power your, all renewables, green energy unicorn fart project without having some type of steady baseload for electricity. I mean, what do you plug your Tesla into? Plug it into fucking coal and natural gas, and when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, maybe you're paying a little bit extra to CPS to feel good about your energy coming from a clean source, which, by the way, I don't think any of that shit's true.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have a smart enough grid to be able to say, hey, we're giving you 100% renewable electricity.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some serious asterisks on how that shit works. But I don't know. It's we keep coming back to the where do you get those extra barrels?
I don't know.
Price is just going to keep going up on, at least on oil, for the time being. And the United States, sure, maybe we transition to electric vehicles a little bit faster than people had anticipated, assuming they can produce enough electric vehicles. But what about the rest of the world? We're not the only country in the world. We're not the only continent in the world. And there are quite a few continents that are still, for the most part, developing. How are they going to be affording electric vehicles? How are they going to power electric vehicles?
Yeah, I haven't formed a full hypothesis on this, and I know that I would be laughed out of the room by a lot of people. I've been seeing BRV getting pretty chirpy about, nat gas prices right now are bullshit. But here are the facts. Everybody got so firmly entrenched in natural gas prices being, low forever. We have more than we could ever use. But even in spite of the fact that people would tell you they knew that Europe was being held over a barrel by Russia. They've known that for years now.
Well, unfortunately, it was Trump that was really telling everybody in a forceful way in some mean tweets and everything.
Right.
And so everybody said, well, fuck that. We don't care.
Even before Trump, if you were paying attention at all, you should have seen it coming. But I mentioned this story before. Years ago in Houston, it was pretty much fresh out of school. And got to be around a lot of really smart people, supposedly really smart people, talking about how LNG was this, wave of the future thing, and Shell and all the big companies were spending multiple billions of dollars, which, at the time sounded even more impressive, that they would commit to this 20 or 30 year time frame, spending billions and billions of dollars on LNG trains. But and this was, prior to the last big natural gas boom, that the Aubrey McClendon, run up to $12 boom. So people didn't really know where the gas market was headed, but they knew that natural gas, if you could rewind and think all right, well, maybe we're in the same mode. We know that natural gas is important. We don't really have an opinion on whether there's enough or there's too much. We know it's important enough to invest huge amounts of money, even at the time where gas was, it was just a run of the mill, $3 or $4 commodity that we kind of took for granted. We had price pressure before, but we kind of took it for granted. We thought, well, gas is a nice thing to have. We appear to have plenty of it. We have enough of it that we think we'll be able to export it to these countries that don't have any, and we can get some arbitrage on the price differential.
And if we need more, we can always just produce more. That was kind of also the mindset.
Right.
That went hand in hand of, why we're not doing this right now.
Right.
I think that was a big part of the argument was, well, if gas prices improve, we can go ahead and start drilling more gas wells.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of a lead time before the production comes online and everything that is being exacerbated now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the same people will say, well, they're just the Marcellus will get back in swing, the Haynesville will get back in swing, and sooner than later we're going to be awash in gas again. And maybe that's true. I believe that there's enough capital discipline right now in place that's likely not going to happen. But even if it weren't, we're close to having that export capacity. And again, I'm speaking out of school here, but like I think almost all of the capacity that we have is already pledged to Asia. I mean, there's some fascinating like geopolitical parts of this.
That is kind of the problem.
Coming, like they're bubbling up. Like we knew they were there. Everybody's known. All these wise people knew that natural gas was a problem for Europeans,
but everybody
did shit about it.
All the companies that were investing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in these export terminals needed those long-term contracts to justify to their shareholders that expenditure. And so setting up those long-term contracts, in retrospect, I wonder what the price mechanism is on most of those, because you would certainly hope that they would be making more money now that natural gas prices are higher. But I would imagine that there's some type of cap in there.
Yeah, I imagine it's
on a 10-year contract or something,
It's benchmarked to this price, not to exceed, 120% of that or whatever it is. But no, I just think it's interesting that the geopolitical part is much more on everybody's minds, where it should have been the whole time. Maybe it was, but you're talking about a scale of something that most people don't understand. Like the average day-to-day oil field, they certainly don't understand the oil field when it comes to a 20 plus year time frame. The amount of money you have to spend 20 years before you realize a dime back on that investment is incredible. I've had a thought, again with my not fully formed hypothesis. What if some of the pop in gas prices is a realization that we're so focused, we're hyper focused on oil. We've been talking about for 5 years, like, okay, well, we thought U.S. was a swing producer, shale wise. We're finding out that inventory is definitely limited. Certainly, at these AFEs. So what if it's like, well, maybe we ought to get ahead of this, start thinking about drilling some more gas wells.
I think that right now everybody is trying to focus on the short term because there's so much uncertainty with the long term. We were talking about this last week on the show about how the messaging from the White House has a huge effect on the willingness of people to invest in fossil fuel projects. And Wall Street has its own agenda in addition to that. So those two forces working together can really put a damper on investing in these projects, which, there's probably a pretty damn well guaranteed return, but at the same time, when you have 6 to 10 years to wait for it, and you have people up in Washington talking about, we're going to put you guys out of business, and you have renewable companies that remind their employees every day that their sole existence is to replace fossil fuels in its entirety. It's just, it's wild that people have this notion of, we're going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be clean and beautiful and nobody's going to be fracking wells, which cause earthquakes and volcanoes. And, thank God we saved Yellowstone.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Saved Yellowstone.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the super volcano. Y'all have watched those fucking Nat Geo shows about what if Yellowstone erupts and everything? I'm not talking about the TV show.
Well, it would be a bad ESG event for sure.
Yeah, that would ding somebody's score.
Yeah.
The Globe.
That would be a hell of an event.
Yeah. Some workforce recordable event. What do they call it?
No. I was talking about the Save Yellowstone powwow.
Oh yeah, sounds good. We'll put it on Layman Life's credit card. Fly up there, private.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I finally paid him for the stickers he made me, so he could probably afford it for sure.
Yeah, but he must be flush with cash. That'd be great. I don't know, man. It's for as good as times are, I feel so unsettled. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. It's we kind of went through the too good to be true phase, and now I'm not unsettled because of prices. I'm just unsettled because I don't know that I've ever been less sure about what's going to happen. Like, when you're rock bottom and oil prices went negative, you know what's going to happen. You're going to climb out of the hole eventually. But
right,
we're not like in super rarefied air, but we're kind of getting close. So the likely thing to happen is that we're going to go down, but all signs point to not.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of feels like battered housewife, husband in jail, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this while it lasts, and it's I'm gonna try to put some things in place here that way I don't get beaten so bad then when he gets back, but he's definitely coming back.
We were just some of the stuff we were just talking through. I feel like one of the talking points that's kind of gone by the wayside is, in 2008 and I guess some of the first part of the downturn in 14, so not 2008, but 9, when things started to go bad in 9 and then again in 14, one of the first things everybody started talking about, and I kind of believe this is because people used to, the green energy thing was not as big back then. There were reporters that were actually really knowledgeable on oil and gas. They spent their entire career working for Penn Energy or, some of those oil and gas journals, stuff like that.
You're not talking about Sergio.
I'm not talking about Sergio.
Sergio was the new wave.
But people used to talk about like the lead times for these projects, offshore projects. Things have changed. Obviously, people, because of some of the stuff we talked about, that there's so much uncertainty. But it's like that talking point has just disappeared. All of these barrels that we used to bring on that had a 10 plus year lead time, it's like we just forgot about those because, well, shale is going to be the swing producer. We can do it onshore, so offshore doesn't even matter. But think about the volume of barrels we used to bring online with that 10-year lead time cushion that's gone. Also think about all the barrels that have been lost through neglect in Mexico, Brazil.
There have been a lot of barrels that have been lost, but I do think that there are now enhanced recovery methods that can be utilized to get a large source of new production online on some of those projects that would certainly help out with the global situation. But you have, again, also their political instability. And, we talk about our political instability. It's nothing compared to, Mexico, Venezuela, and countries like that where, yes, a lot of damage has been done to those reservoirs. But I don't think that by any means, it's not worth going in and trying to get things back running. And, you know, I've talked about a few times on the show, talking with my neighbor who's from Mexico City and is involved in the oil and gas industry. And he keeps talking about how Mexico just needs to have another election to continue replacing the radicals in their political party system. And eventually it will come back. The time frame, who knows? And the United States may be at a point then where we say, hey, you know, it's the sunset for the oil and gas industry. We're shutting everything down, and the world has to rely on a Mexico or Venezuela.
Right.
And maybe that's the external pressure that actually gets those countries back on track. I have no idea. But, you know, now we're talking with Venezuela and Iran and, you know, all of these other countries where we know we don't want to be working with those governments.
Right.
But prices at the pump, midterm elections, got to do something.
Yeah, it's been squirrely for sure. But,
Yeah, and then with social media and just
oh yeah, with all the fucking influencers riding electric mini bikes, you know.
But I'm just talking about, like, if there's good internet in a spot, you know, John Q. Citizen or Juan Q. Citizen in those countries can, you know, if you can't just send the military in or the Navy SEALs or even the, you know, maybe even the CIA to come run roughshod on folks until something settles down anymore.
Oh, you can. I mean, we do. Yeah. Doesn't work out very well, but you can do that.
Yeah, I guess Russia's doing it, so why not, right?
Yeah, you know, they've got a problem. They've got a TikTok problem with their own fucking soldiers filming stupid shit, like divulging where their locations are for artillery and shit like that. And then the Ukrainians are using fucking, you know, consumer grade drones to go, you know, spot for artillery barrages and shit. It's pretty wild. Alberto, what's going on, man?
I'm just living. I'm at the rig.
That's better than the alternative, man.
It is, yeah. Well, you know, some days you wonder.
Are you slant drilling right now?
I'm actually just watching a co-rod rig start rigging up to run in some co-rod.
What does that mean?
Co-rod is continuous rod. It's the rod string that you use for a pig dick pump.
So a pig dick pump. I'm just
Jesus, have you not been watching my fucking videos?
I mean, I watched your you know, common industry terms and identify these people in your social circles.
Yeah.
Probably about 30 times.
What's the technical term for that pump?
A progressive cavity pump.
There you go. That I have heard of.
Yeah, the pig dick was where I got a little you know, sideways on that one.
It's
the rotor on it looks like a pig's dick.
I don't know that I can actually say I know what a pig's dick looks like.
Or you're in front of a computer, aren't you?
Yeah,
Don't
you know,
do it.
Fucking
I'm
live a little.
Maybe WTX wants to go ahead and just like start sending some of those pictures to the intern for future reference, you know, since he's not.
I remember this one time, Trashy and I were plotting this fucking troll of a mutual friend of ours who is our favorite subject of messing with. And he had this pet pig that he bought, and he thought it was a pot-bellied pig, but actually it was just a commercial hog piglet. And so he gets this pig, and his kids become very fond of it, and then it weighs and then it becomes like 550 pounds. And it was kind of dangerous, and it killed a bunch of his chickens and stuff. And we then plotted fairly extensively on how we would get this pig impregnated. Because we figured that if we could knock this pig up, that he would know it was us, but he'd never be able to prove it. And it would drive him insane. So I've learned a lot about pig artificial insemination and things like that. And yeah.
The more you know.
Is there a part 2 to the story?
No, we didn't end up knocking the pig up, and then we tried to convince him to let us kill it and eat it, but then he wouldn't do that either.
I mean, isn't in Canada, I think that's rape.
Eating a pig? Yeah, it is.
Knocking a pig up against its will.
Yeah, probably. We're not in Oklahoma anymore, where that's considered a Friday night.
Well, when you hopped on, were you kind of listening to what we were talking about with the lead time on natural gas projects, and how strategically and globally important natural gas is?
Yeah,
but
I didn't catch all of it.
Everybody's still afraid to pony up for the investment because there's such a long turnaround time on that.
Oh yeah, and even if everybody, even if Shell and Exxon or whatever all just got together and let's stroke a $10 billion check each and just make some shit happen, you're still looking at 10 years before stuff. Okay, in the United States maybe 5 years before stuff comes online, and in Canada 20 years before stuff comes online.
And in that case, all they're going to be relying on is that in 10 years, the price of the commodity that we're trying to produce is going to crash because our global, production project is going to come online, and we're going to drive the price of natural gas through the fucking floor. So, I mean, I can kind of understand why nobody's really doing it.
I mean, if you believe that, then you got to invest in natural gas production. Or, well, I get your point.
Everybody would do that if it was in the short term, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And if everybody decides, hey, we're going to start heavily investing in these projects that are going to bring, billions or trillions of, gas online in 10 years, I mean, you have to assume that the price at that point in time would be higher than it is currently because of production declines and everything. But then the reliance on it may be waning as well in a 10-year time frame. So
where's the reliance going to go?
I mean, I think everybody's just going to start living 1900s settlers again to save the fucking planet, right?
Are you going to do that?
I mean, I wasn't planning on it, but I think when you're not able to actually afford to keep the lights on because everybody's required to use renewable energy for a certain percentage of their consumption, and then your consumption is ratioed and quoted by the federal overlords.
You are assuming that central governments have the ability to actually do the things they intend to do. I got a question for you, Gates.
I'm assuming that people are so fucking stupid that they're gonna let it happen.
They're gonna figure it out. They're figuring it out here in Canada.
I mean, it's the federal government because CPS Energy is fucking radically racist. They are constantly trying to figure out how they can determine where the white people in affluent neighborhoods live so that they can raise their rates to subsidize rates for minorities in other parts of the city. So, I mean, dude, I'm not saying that the federal government is the only entity that's going to be involved in this shit.
Yeah, the only thing governments can do is fuck stuff up. And like when they
Agreed.
accidentally get it right once in a while, like you'll hear about it on the fucking news, and like it'll be all over the place, right? They're gonna spend money on advertising just to say that they did it right the one time, right? And then anything else they try to do, the only influence that they can have on something is to make it
Have
worse.
you listened to the local radio or like actual like FM radio lately? Because they're
Every
still
day.
advertising how successful the COVID vaccine program is.
The local hospital districts at these small towns have an hour to 3 hour segment on every local radio every single day. And I'm sure it's the same thing in Fort Worth and San Antonio too, but it just nobody listens to those in the
It's
big
just-
towns, right?
It's fucking wild how much money they're spending on advertising for that because, you know, I think they kind of ponied up and guaranteed X amount of millions of doses on all these vaccines and everything, and turns out they didn't have the demand for it.
What I'm getting at and what I'm seeing here in Canada is because of I use the real estate market as an example. Because it's so fundamental to sort of, you know, the American dream, we'll say the North American way of life of owning a single detached home. And the price of owning a home in Canada has gone so high, so fast, that even the very financially responsible of the sub 30 generation have just had their legs taken out from under them. And they're literally like, hey, I did everything I was supposed to do, and I now no longer have any hope of ever owning a home. And they're getting really angry. And they're going to be angry. And when you try and take someone's life away, and frankly, the ability to pursue your whatever you want in your life, owning a home, whatever it is, affording to feed your children, you know, these sort of normal aspirations that people have. When someone takes that away from you, when it's obviously being taken away from you, you're going to get really, really angry. And you're going to see a lot of pushback on this stuff. People are going to figure it out. And these policies will not stand forever. Literally, I mean, it'll be a matter of, do the leaders lose their jobs or lose their heads?
I mean, is Trudeau still y'all's prime minister?
He is, yes.
Because I remember a couple of months ago when everybody said he was going to get thrown out of office. And so I'm just saying that I think that people are...
They're not mad enough yet.
People are so caught up in the politics and the bullshit on every side of the spectrum that nothing's really ever going to happen.
Like they pick a side and just fucking stay there.
So what you're saying is, if you can't afford to heat your home for your children or give them food, you're going to take it sitting down?
I mean, I didn't say that. I'm saying that I think that we are facing a situation where eventually there's going to be this mindset of, well, if we have to turn our power off for 3 hours a day, we're saving the planet because we're not using fossil fuels. And
no,
they've
I think 1%,
like
1% of the population, 1% of the population might be willing to do that.
So
but
the
I mean,
1% are the people that turned this into a fucking religion, that they're getting all of these moron people like the fucking digital wildcatters also to get onto this fucking ESG, you know, made up bullshit about how everybody's going to band together and save the fucking planet. It's all fucking made up. Yeah. Everybody says, well, trust the science. Well, there's science on both sides that says completely different things.
Yeah. Here's where I think we land with that stuff. Like it's going to go. It'll like some some government, some little special districts and towns and municipalities will go too far, and like you'll like you won't even be allowed to burn a candle in your own house because of carbon. But on the other end of that, like where this lands, is eventually all of our devices, and this is it's gonna feel weird for fucking Big Brother having insight in every little thing you do in your life, but like your dishwasher won't run from 3 p.m. until after 7 p.m. Or whatever the power company says. Your TV goes into low power mode for a few hours. Your water heater stops working or goes into low power mode. Like I think all of the devices in your house do that, and like
they already are petitioning to control your air conditioning.
They have controlled they have done that to me.
Yeah,
that has happened to me. Like I woke up and got a message about, hey, we noticed you had a Nest upstairs. We went ahead and bumped that up to 76 during the day because you're an idiot for keeping it at 73. And I'm like, well, you don't live there with my 2 little boys that are going to bitch about how hot it's going to be when they have to go to bed. But thank you for that. That's already happening.
Yeah.
You guys have shit where they can control your house?
Yep.
Oh. I just have like a little dial.
Do not succumb to a Nest or any kind of smart.
Alberta, don't ever get smart.
Dude, my vehicle's a 2004. The only technology I really have is a fucking laptop and a cell phone.
And on that note, Rick Bush is showing up at my shack, so I gotta let you go. But have fun. Don't worry. Eventually, these motherfuckers are gonna lose their heads, and I am going to teabag their corpses. Have a good day.
Good here. Wow.
Holy shit, man.
So did you have to register your Nest like for some rebate or something like that? And that's how they got control of it, or did it just exist?
Your wife probably filled out that paperwork on your behalf.
No. Okay. So there are 2 parts. The first part is the house had the Nest installed when we moved in. And of course, I'm an idiot, so I thought, oh, that's cool. I want to see how this works. Like, this will be great to control from my phone. And then the only other thing I ever saw about it was a barrage of emails and snail mail about, hey, if you'll sign up for this program, which, I think, in San Antonio, we have one option for power. It's kind of unique in Texas. So CPS was sending me all kinds of stuff about, if you'll just sign up for this program, we'll give you a small discount on your rate, and we will make sure to install smart meters in your house. And so I was like, I don't know about that, but we already had the Nest, so it may be that the previous owners signed up for something.
So the way that those programs work is they provide you the smart thermostat at no cost to you. And then they also, to a very, very small degree, will subsidize your electricity bill during, peak hours when they adjust your thermostat.
Right.
So you're not actually saving any money. They're just preventing you from spending more money.
Right.
They're not giving you any money.
Yeah.
And they're taking that electricity, and they would charge you a flat rate for, and then charging the industrial complex down the road that needs that electricity like 20x.
Yeah, and they're also probably branding it as green energy because they took it from you. Rob Peter to pay Paul, right?
Yeah, you dirty motherfucker.
Yeah. And they're like, well, it's recycled energy, because we took it from Massive Frack's house.
My children, my whole family's going to be so surprised when I come home this afternoon and rage rip out the Nest. I've forgotten about that.
The house turns into like a insurance claim, like a fire claim.
There's got to be somebody. There's got to be somebody that knows how to hack those things.
Oh, I'm sure.
To just totally fuck with CPS, right? Where every time they try to adjust it, it just pops up porn pop-ups all over the fucking computer, Or the Dennis Nedry.
Yeah.
What if I've got an idea. Change the subject here. What if we did this? made the minimum price for crude oil $1,000, and then that would let and remove all subsidies on renewable green energy. And if you had $1,000 crude, then the renewable guys could afford to catch up because all the other energy rates would have to catch up with it, right? Is that? But crude can go above 1,000, but it can never go below 1,000. Should I have kept that one to myself, guys?
I think it would cause such massive disruption in the transportation markets that would be that would be what Alberta keeps talking about, like the violent uprising.
Some side note, surprised that hasn't happened because we've had talks of that for a couple of months now. Like, oh, just wait, your toilet paper's not coming, and I'm hearing it like maybe it is coming.
Well, but you remember January 6th, that was the coup,
right?
Those people walking around saying please and thank you in the Capitol. I don't think that that's a viable option, or that would really solve anything. WTX.
What's another number then? 180,
420 and 69 cents, baby.
420.69.
Yeah, everybody would get on board with that one. I don't know, like Alberta, he's got kind of his, more radical, I guess independence would be the word. But at the same time, Canada, they're not doing much better than the United States right now in terms of, respecting people's rights and shit like that. And, you only have rights as long as you're willing to protect them.
I do disagree with. I think we've had pretty good illustration of the fact that people are willing to do absolutely jack shit when it comes to their rights being trampled on. We're all so, and I include myself in this category because I've been about as mad as I've ever been. But I know that I am totally unwilling to do anything about it because I feel like, and I've had this thought since I was 15 years old. I used to talk to my dad about, I hear you, Dad, and my uncles sitting around bitching about things, but you never do anything. Why do you not do anything? And he remembers it as a kind of a profound moment too. It's like, that's a very good question. Like, why is everybody so passive about all this stuff? But it's only gotten worse. And I don't, Canadian truckers, that was a pretty good moment. Like they tried something. They did more than any Americans did from what I saw. We all just sat back and took it. We're so afraid of our own shadow or anybody, doxing us for being at a rally or something, I don't know, but what are we going to do? We're not going to do shit. So
I'll say this. During all the COVID restrictions and shutdowns and I'm kind of disappointed. On one hand, I really understand why it happened, but I'm still like looking back. I'm disappointed with how our governor handled the restrictions and the stay at home order and like you've got to have a piece of paper to travel. Like none of that shit happened in Oklahoma. There was never a mask order. There was never a stay at home order. There was never any of these other stuff. Mm-hmm. And like it, I don't know. Looking back on all that, it's like yeah, maybe we went too far. Even Texas that didn't go that far, maybe we still went too far.
We did.
And it was about power, right? Like it caused a fucking armed standoff in Odessa with the sheriff's department and some folks that just wanted to drink beer.
Yeah, I think wheelchair went too far. I think wheelchair. If he had
Hot
any
Wheels.
more, huh?
Hot Wheels.
Yeah, Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels. I think Hot Wheels went too far. If he had political ambitions beyond governor of Texas, which how do you fuck up being pretty much a beloved politician in a wheelchair in Texas? How do you blow that opportunity by being just like you're straight up, I'm going to follow the science with all the sheep,
Well, and so now the CDC trying to say that they have the authority to uphold the mask mandate to protect public health. Well, where's the actual fucking data to say that that is protecting the public's health?
Yeah.
They literally have never produced any data about the efficacy of masks. It's all been done by third parties. I'm sure that there are third parties that have done studies that prove that masks, work and protect everybody, and we're all going to be happy now. That's not the information that I've seen. But, the fact that the CDC is trying to now say, oh, yeah, we have authority to do these certain things. Well, they don't. They're an advisory body. The executive branch could try to enforce it themselves, but I don't think that old Sleepy Joe has the fight in him.
I don't know. I guess any way you look at it, to Alberta's point, I don't think there are enough people with enough willpower to do anything about pretty much anything.
That's what I was saying. Everybody's fucking dumb and nobody's going to do anything.
Well, they're afraid, and not it's not an unfounded fear. They're afraid, they have illustrated, speaking out against.
We'll take your fucking job.
Personal rights.
Yeah.
We'll take your job. If you're too outspoken and it gets on social media, it'll probably be worse than just your job. You might be completely ruined. So it's not unfounded, that you wouldn't want to engage in all that. But I don't know, man. How we ended up back on masks, but
yeah, and I don't know that. Like you said, there hasn't been a government study or government funded study that ever said this, right? I think it's all been private or maybe, I guess the medical industry is still private, right? But from my understanding since the beginning is masks probably hold in a little bit of a disease, right? But they're not gonna do a good job of filtering the disease if it's out in the air in front of you.
Yeah.
So I get that. I get I took my son to the doctor today and had to wear a mask in, had to wear a mask out. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense, right? Sick people are in there, and if you're coming to the doctor, you're probably sick, so wear a mask. That makes a little bit of sense, right? But wearing a mask to the fucking hardware store,
the grocery store, the hardware store, the fucking gas station. Office. I mean, I still see people fucking pumping gas wearing a mask.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't.
The post office, government buildings, federal government buildings.
But again, this is something that I was talking about when Alberta was on here. Is that these people on the left have turned this into a religion, and it is this is how you show that you support our cause. You wear a mask even when you don't have to, or else you're one of them. They've turned this into some kind of fucking cult.
Well, I guess the good news is to bring it back to energy, somewhat. The amazing thing is, it doesn't matter what your politics are, because physics, win the day, right? If we got a taste of it in February, the big winter storm. It doesn't matter who you're simping for, which side you're on. At the end of the day, if there's no energy, there's no energy. So that sorts itself out, I think, pretty quick. And it would be fascinating to hear from anything at all from Europeans other than just a blanket like, wow, Europeans are really at the mercy of Putin right now. That's a shame. Like, let's talk to some people in Western Europe right now and see, like, how do you feel about the fact that there may be no heat this winter?
I mean, my wife's got a very close friend of hers from college who's Latvian. So I don't know. I'll reach out to her and see if she's got family or friends that are in Latvia that would be willing to talk about it. She's living in LA or Portland or wherever. So
I mean, because think about like, we're all scared. Go ahead.
I spent about half the day yesterday, or I guess it was the day before yesterday, with a guy that's from France, riding around in the truck with me, and I showed him all sorts of locations in Barstow and Pecos, and he's in college, and he.
What are you doing, hanging out with a French college student, dude?
All right. So
like, where is this going? Where did this start?
Okay, where it started. So Frax and Baroness came over Sunday afternoon, and we had beers and barbecue, and this dude was with him. Like we hung out for a little bit. They split ways, or not they split. They went back to her ranch.
Yeah.
So he texted me on WhatsApp, and he was like, "Hey, I want to see the oil field. I want to see what's going on." It's like I'm writing this paper. I'm going to school for geopolitics.
Holy shit! I did not realize that G.W. Goldman was French.
Yeah,
is that where this is going?
No, certainly not GW. But he was like, we're in whatever class he was in. He was like, I had to pick a subject that's affecting the world that people don't understand, and he was like, energy is what I picked, and he was like, West Texas is the hub of energy for the world right now. So her stuff has made the news, and it just anyway, just that's how it rattled along, and so they he's checking some stuff out, and his thing was like and even like the reason she introduced us was like he needs to hear more than just what I have going on, because what I have going on is not representative of the industry. She was like, this is what this everything's going on her ranch is not the oil field, is not the energy sector. I was like, all right, cool. I'll go and show him some really cool spots. I'll show him some ugly spots, and I'll walk him through some facilities, and we'll do this. Wrap up the day at the Pecos feed store, because that's where the Cowboys hang out and all that stuff.
Yeah. And
so he's, his mindset is like, you guys are doing work here. Like if this wasn't here, or we chose not to do it, or the United States or whatever chose not to produce the oil and gas and like the different things that happen here, he's like, our lives would be so much worse off. He was like, Europe would be crushed right now without West Texas. Is what he said. Even though a barrel of oil out of an oil well here may not end up in Paris or wherever else, like it may not end up as a liter of petrol somewhere in Europe, but like it by displacement through the supply chain. And this is such a big, like this Texas energy is such a big thing that he just wanted to come see it, and he was like, grateful, really, really happy to see all of these things.
I think that's fascinating, and what a wonderful thing somebody like a group like API or any industry advocate could do to round up 10 of those kids and like get that story out, because that's the kind of stuff that needs to get out. There may be only 10 kids in France that give a shit, but it's such an interesting story, though.
I like the idea, and I do think that's because there are kids who are on foreign exchange programs and study abroad and shit like that might be in a somewhat related field. You know, they're probably not studying, you know, petroleum engineering or, you know, geology or anything, but if you're somebody who's studying, you know, supply chain or, you know, even business management and shit, you need fucking power. So that's a really interesting idea.
Well, and here's an interesting offshoot of that. Like, we haven't talked about, we talked about manpower issues in oil and gas, but any landman that's been paying attention to the job world, and you know I have on the land side, I cannot believe the volume of posts there are for people with our skill set. And you know that has to roll over into engineering and all kinds of different aspects.
Yep.
The things they need are in high demand because of the subsidies, because they've just been handed billions upon billions of dollars. But is anybody talking about that right now? Like, we're talking about just general shortage because people don't want to be in oil and gas.
No, I talked about it the other day. I posted on Twitter about it that, you know, all of these fucking brokers, oil and gas brokers, are trying to get in on the grift right now.
Sure.
And, you know, they're trying to get me to fucking work for $300 a day on a fucking renewables project.
Right.
Okay, well, if you're not going to pay me over $400 a day, then guess what? You can go find some kid who just graduated college and teach him how to run title, and he can do the fucking supply chain title for your renewables project, because I'm not going to fucking do it. There are people that are willing to pay me what I'm worth, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just, you know, an even bigger, such a big issue when there's already pretty stiff competition to get anybody interested in the industry in the first place. And then you have new kid on the block rolling town with billions of dollars in their pocket, and they're like, hey, do you want to save the world and make a bunch of money? Like, a bunch of money relative to what their job prospects are in the traditional workforce. Like,
Yeah.
Renewable energy probably still pays more than taking your business degree to Procter & Gamble or some shit, you know? Maybe not.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Procter & Gamble's pretty ingrained in society.
Yeah.
I feel like we need Pollard to come on and preach the gospel of Procter & Gamble to us.
Did he work there?
No, I'm just saying he smokes a lot of fucking cigarettes.
Yeah, he enjoys Dr. Pepper.
Well, I mean, so does Lindsay. So,
yeah.
You know.
I don't know, man. That's kind of back to the, like, I feel so uneasy right now, but it's amazing because, like, we have every tailwind we could possibly ask for. Like, if you sat down and said, what are the 10 things we need to happen for prices to increase and for the industry to be healthy? Like, we have those things and more. We could not have more favorable conditions for the industry to be doing well. And yet, like, I think we're all like pretty anxious. I mean, I'm sure there's some mineral bros and some deal makers that are, you know, pretty happy with life right now, but, you know, the average worker bee,
not PL.
The average worker bee is, like, you know, kind of frozen right now. Like, which way do I commit here?
Yeah, and you know, at the end of last year, I really wanted to like bring some data forward to my boss in HR, because I thought the timing was right. To tell, you know, hey, I need to give these guys a 10% pay bump. You know, my hourly employees. But if I would have presented that data, they would have come to me and said, no, we need to give them like an 8% reduction.
Yeah.
In pay for local help. For some reason in 2021, pay went down.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was lumping in, you know, 18 months or whatever, because in 2020 things were so shitty for everybody. And that's not just in our industry. It was everywhere except for healthcare. You know.
Yeah. Well, guys, I've taken over the living room long enough, and I think the kids have been really well behaved, and I don't think I can hold it together any longer.
Well, it was fun talking with you today, and thanks for being on. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap everything up now, and we'll see everybody again next week.
Is there an outro video that I need to hold on for?
We'll just go ahead and we'll play the intro music again and just fade to black.
Perfect. Good talking to you guys.
Enjoy it, man.
Take it easy,
Have a
man.
good weekend.
I mean, I think very interesting conversation, but once again, we're sitting here just kind of talking about the same fucking problems every week and not really making any progress.
Well, that's the thing is it's going to progress whether we care about it or not, and not in a way that Greenies want to see.
Yeah. There we go.